Have you ever felt like just a background character in someone else's life? Like they didn't love you, they just loved the convenience of you? Simon believed in love, not the dramatic, movie-style confessions, but the real kind, the kind built over time. And he thought he had found it with Caroline, until the night she said something that shattered everything. "I could replace you tomorrow." That's how illusions break. That's how love stories end. But what if the ending is just the beginning? A story of betrayal, self-worth, and the kind of revenge that doesn't come with shouting or chaos, but with winning. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Now, let's get started. Simon had always held a firm belief in love, not the grand, cinematic kind where a man sprints through an airport, shouting declarations of devotion, but the kind rooted in reality. To him, love was about finding someone who fit, building a life together, and managing to coexist without turning minor inconveniences, like laundry, into full-blown wars. So, when he met Caroline in his early 20s, it felt like he had won the cosmic lottery. She was breathtakingly beautiful, sharp-witted, and carried an effortless charisma that made people naturally gravitate toward her. Together, they were that couple, the one others admired and thought, now, those two? They're meant to be. Late-night drives, deep conversations, and spontaneous adventures made their relationship feel like something straight out of a perfectly curated montage. By the time they got married, Simon was convinced he had secured a lifelong partner. They envisioned a future brimming with adventure, traveling the world, chasing dreams, and crafting a life that was nothing short of extraordinary. And for a time, it felt like they were living that dream. But perfection is an illusion, and reality has a way of creeping in, slow and insidious, like a bill you forgot was due until it lands in red ink on your doorstep. Determined to build something meaningful, Simon buried himself in his work. Long hours, sleepless nights, and stress levels high enough to make even a seasoned therapist consider a career change. Yet no matter how overwhelming his workload became, he always made time for Caroline. Romantic dinners, thoughtful surprises, weekend getaways. He wanted her to feel cherished. And at first, she did. She cheered him on, took pride in his ambitions, and played the role of his biggest supporter, until she didn't. The shift was subtle at first. She started talking about needing more space, carving out moments for herself. Simon, ever the supportive husband, encouraged it. After all, personal growth was important, or so he thought. That was his first mistake, because for Caroline, focusing on herself wasn't about self-improvement, therapy, or picking up a new hobby. No, it meant indulging in whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, without a thought for how it affected their marriage. Simon found himself existing in a strange limbo, there, but unseen. Appreciated, but only in the way people appreciate stable Wi-Fi. You only notice when it's gone. He assured himself it was just a phase. Every marriage faces challenges, right? So, he did what any devoted husband would. He doubled down on his efforts, avoided conflict, suppressed his frustration. He showered her with gifts, flowers, perfume, that exorbitantly priced handbag she had been eyeing. But none of it made a difference. She'd thank him with a hollow smile, her attention already drifting back to her phone, more engaged with social media than their relationship. What had once been a partnership now felt like a one-man act. Simon was just an extra in the Caroline show. One night, after a grueling day, he brought home dinner, hoping for a quiet evening together, a chance to reconnect. She barely looked up from her screen. "I already ate," she said, her tone flat, her gaze fixed on an influencer's Instagram story. Simon forced a smile. "Would have been nice to know before I picked up takeout." She shrugged, not even bothering to meet his eyes. "You should have texted." "Right." Because apparently, spending time with his wife now required a formal request. As they sat in silence on opposite ends of the couch, Something clicked in his mind. Caroline wasn't just distant. She carried herself as if she were above him. And then came the moment that shattered any lingering delusions. She stumbled in late from yet another girls' night, carelessly tossing her bag onto the couch. She looked at him, amused, as if he were some unpaid intern in the life she had curated. "You know," she mused, stretching dramatically, "sometimes I think about how many men would kill to be with me." Simon blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" She smirked, the kind of smirk that made him feel like the punchline to a joke he didn't understand. "Think about it," she continued, flopping onto the couch. "I could walk into any bar right now, and at least 5 guys would be lined up to take me home." She waved a dismissive hand. "I mean, I love you and all, but let's be honest. Men are obsessed with me." Simon inhaled slowly, gripping the fraying threads of his patience. "So what? You want a standing ovation for existing?" Caroline laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, babe, don't be jealous. I'm just saying, a woman like me has options. Options." The word hit Simon like a splash of ice water. This wasn't just emotional distance, this was entitlement. She carried herself as if being wanted was some divine right, as if he should be grateful she still chose to be with him. And in that moment, something inside Simon cracked. This wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't just stress. Caroline didn't respect him. In fact, she barely even liked him. And if there was one thing Simon knew about relationships, it was this. You can't salvage something when the other person has already stopped trying. He wasn't the kind to yell, slam doors, or issue dramatic ultimatums. Simon had always been a problem solver. But how do you fix a marriage when your wife openly declares she's a prize and that you should feel lucky to have her? Spoiler alert, you don't. But Simon? He still wasn't ready to face that truth. Not yet. So, as always, he did what he had always done. He swallowed his frustration, masking it behind a neutral expression. This was just a phase, he told himself. She would come around. Right? Wrong. Because then came that night. You know the kind. The one where everything finally clicks into place, where denial packs up and leaves without a trace, replaced by the biting chill of reality. It began as it often did, with Simon waiting up again. Caroline was out, supposedly indulging in some self-care routine. Based on past behavior, that likely meant overpriced cocktails and the company of men whose business acumen was limited to flashy talk and empty LinkedIn profiles. Simon sat in silence, eyes trained on the relentless advance of the clock. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2. The low rumble of an approaching car made him exhale sharply. At last. The front door creaked open, and Caroline breezed in, trailing the scent of alcohol and reckless decisions. She didn't even glance his way. Instead, she tossed her purse onto the couch, kicked off her heels with the nonchalance of royalty, and reached for a bottle of water. Simon stayed seated, too calm, dangerously calm. "Caroline," he said, his voice steady, "do you even realize what you're doing?" She barely let him finish before rolling her eyes. Oh God, not this again. He ignored her dismissal. "This isn't just about coming home late. You're pushing me away. You don't act like my wife anymore." She let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "Oh, please." A scoff, a shake of her head. "You think I need you?" And there it was, the moment of clarity. She wasn't just brushing him off, she was challenging him. "You think you're irreplaceable?" she continued, twirling a strand of her perfectly styled hair. "Plenty of men would kill to be in your position. If you leave, I could replace you by tomorrow. Not eventually, not in time. Tomorrow." Simon didn't react. No raised voice, no shattered glass like some dramatic movie character. He just sat there, letting the words settle. Because when your own wife spells out that you're disposable, there's nothing left to argue. Nothing at all. Caroline straightened, flipping her hair over her shoulder as if she had just delivered a TED Talk on why I'm the prize and you're not. "I'm done living by your rules," she announced. "I'm done living by anyone's rules. This is my life, and no man, no society, gets to dictate it." Then, with an infuriating smirk, she added, "I'm in my baby girl era now, Simon. Either accept it or don't." Simon took a slow, deliberate breath. Then he smiled. Not in anger, not with sarcasm, just a quiet, resigned smile that said, "I'm done here." "All right," he said simply. Caroline blinked. "All right?" "Yeah." Simon stood, stretched, and picked up his phone from the coffee table. "If you want to be in your baby girl era, be my guest." Then he walked past her, heading for the bedroom. She stood there, waiting, for an argument, a guilt trip, maybe even an apology. But she got nothing. Because for the first time, Simon genuinely didn't care anymore. The next morning, Simon did what every man does when he reaches his limit. He called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best in the business. The kind of attorney who could leave a billionaire's ex-wife with nothing but a handshake and a one-way ticket home. Simon wasn't interested in negotiations, reconciliations, or compromises. He wanted one thing: a clean break. Caroline's reaction? A shrug. When he told her he was filing for divorce, she didn't even look up from her phone. "Okay," she muttered, casually scrolling through Instagram, "if that's what you want." And that was it. No tears, no protests, no last-ditch efforts to save their marriage, just cold indifference. Simon should have felt relieved. Instead, it gnawed at him, not because he wanted her to beg, but because, after everything they had built, this was all their marriage had ever meant to her. He swallowed the bitterness and let it go. If she wanted to be heartless, so be it. The divorce moved swiftly, not because Simon rushed it, but because Caroline couldn't be bothered to fight over anything that didn't involve a brunch reservation. No kids, no significant shared assets. Simon wasn't about to argue over furniture or a Netflix subscription. Within weeks, it was over. At first, Caroline flourished post-divorce. She was free, unshackled, and she made sure the world knew it. Instagram became her personal stage. New chapter, new me. No man, no problems. Knowing your worth is the ultimate glow-up. Her feed was a never-ending parade of rooftop parties, expensive drinks, and perfectly curated snapshots of women who all seemed to be living the same manufactured fairy tale. For a while, it seemed like she had won. She had admirers. She had options. She had attention. But what she didn't have? Substance. That was the missing ingredient. The men circling around her. They weren't offering devotion, nor were they seeking anything beyond the immediate. Their motives were simple, transparent, and fleeting. Caroline yearned for admiration but found herself drowning in late-night you-up messages. She dreamed of a love story grand enough to sweep her off her feet, yet she ended up with men who still relied on their parents for laundry. She longed for depth, passion, something real. Instead, she met men who couldn't even commit to choosing a restaurant. The excitement wore thin. The parties became monotonous. The brief encounters left her feeling empty. But the harshest truth? The men who genuinely sought a meaningful relationship, the kind built on something lasting, never sparked her interest. For years, Caroline had believed she was the ultimate prize, the woman any man would be fortunate to have. It never occurred to her to ask, what if the kind of man she desired had no desire for her in return? Meanwhile, Simon wasn't just doing well, he was thriving. Not in a carefully curated, picture-perfect way, but in a way that was real and undeniable. He poured himself into his career, elevated his success, and watched his business expand. He committed to the gym, sculpted himself into the best shape of his life. He traveled. He reconnected with old friends, and most importantly, he discovered contentment in solitude. For the first time in years, he wasn't chasing after love. He wasn't seeking validation. He wasn't waiting for someone to acknowledge his worth. He simply lived, and it felt good. Caroline? She was little more than a distant memory. Then, on a perfectly ordinary day, Their paths crossed. It should have been nothing. Just another errand, a quick in and out, no big surprises, no drama, no twists of fate. But fate doesn't like to be predictable. Turning the corner in a department store, he saw her, Caroline, standing just a few feet away, a shopping bag in hand, her expression frozen as though she had seen a ghost. For a moment, Simon barely recognized her. She still looked good. She had always known how to maintain appearances, but something was different. A faint crack in her confidence, a slight hesitation in the way she held herself. The woman who once declared she could replace him without a second thought was, for the first time, at a loss for words. "Simon?" Her voice wavered. He gave a nod. "Caroline." Silence stretched between them. Then, she tucked her hair behind her ear, the universal move of someone trying to steady themselves. "Wow," she forced a laugh, though it came out awkward. "You look different." He shrugged. "Life's been good." And that stung. He could see it in her eyes. The conversation unfolded as expected. The obligatory questions, "How have you been? What have you been up to?" The polite small talk people use to gauge whether life had been kinder or crueler in their absence. Simon kept his responses light, surface level, cordial but distant. He wasn't rude, but he wasn't giving her what she was looking for. And what did she want? Regret? Longing? Some sign that she had meant more than time had allowed? Instead, she found indifference. After a few more minutes of awkward exchanges, she hesitated before offering a small smile. "Maybe we could catch up sometime." Simon returned the smile. "Yeah, maybe." They both knew it was a lie. Days later, it started. A text. Casual, almost careless. "Hey, it was nice seeing you the other day." Simon hovered over his phone, debating. Against his better judgment, he responded. And from there, the floodgates opened. At first, it was nothing. Just brief conversations, casual check-ins. Then came the reminiscing. "Remember when?" Then the shift. "I've been thinking a lot about us." But Simon wasn't blind. He understood what was happening. Caroline wasn't just looking back. She was testing the waters. Because people like her, they don't recognize value until they've destroyed it. And suddenly, the man she once saw as replaceable didn't seem so replaceable anymore. Then, one evening, she made it clear. "Let's meet up. Just dinner. Just to talk." Simon stared at the message, weighing his options. For a fleeting moment, temptation flickered. Not because he wanted her back, not because he missed her, but because some stubborn, all-too-human part of him wanted to know. Would she finally admit she was wrong? Would she say the words she never had the courage to before? Would she give him the closure he had never received? And just as quickly, he dismissed the thought. Because in the end, what would it change? What was he really looking for? An apology? An explanation? A final conversation to make sense of what was long past repair? No. Simon wasn't interested in Caroline's version of closure. He needed his own. So, he kept it brief. His response was simple. "I don't think that's a good idea." He hit send. No additional words, no prolonged exchange, no second guessing. That was it. The cord was cut. Caroline didn't respond immediately, but let's be honest, women like her never fade away quietly. A week later, her name appeared on his screen again, this time draped in guilt. "I just think it's a shame that after everything, we can't even stay friends." And there it was. Simon read the message, considered replying, but then a realization settled in. What would be the point? Caroline wasn't after friendship. She was after access, a lingering presence in his life just in case she needed it. Because people like her, they don't miss you. They miss the comfort of having you as a fallback plan. With a quiet chuckle and a shake of his head, Simon did what he should have done long ago. He blocked her. Not out of anger, not out of pettiness, but with a calm certainty that this chapter was over. His focus was elsewhere now, on himself, on his future, on things that actually mattered. And just like that, she was gone. You know what Simon didn't do next? He didn't go scrolling through her social media. He didn't curate a feed full of "look how great I'm doing" posts. He didn't drown himself in fleeting rebounds just to prove a non-existent point. No. He simply moved forward. He invested his time in himself, his career, his peace, his ambitions. And that was the real triumph. Because nothing rattles a toxic ex more than the realization that they no longer have a grip on your emotions. Caroline? She would never admit it, but she knew. She had lost something real. And Simon? He wasn't losing a single minute of sleep over it. Because the second you prioritize yourself over those who take you for granted, there's no looking back. That's how you win. And what came next? Simon thrived. Business flourished. His life found its rhythm, and most importantly, he no longer wasted energy on people who didn't deserve it. Then, one evening changed everything. It was a prestigious networking event, the kind where sharp minds convened, exchanged insights, and quietly assessed one another's success. Simon had been to many of these, but this time was different. This time, he met Melissa. The first thing he noticed wasn't just her beauty, though yes, she was stunning, but her presence. Melissa didn't merely enter a room, she owned it, not with ostentation or volume, but with the poised confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. That struck Simon. She was driven, astute, yet carried a warmth that softened her intensity. She had vision, ambition, and most importantly, clarity about her journey. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. One discussion led to another, and suddenly, they were lost in exchanges about business, philosophy, and personal aspirations, the things that mattered. With Caroline, it had always been about what she could take. With Melissa, it was about what they could create together. Their dialogue wasn't just flirtatious, though the chemistry was undeniable. It was electric, a meeting of equals. They challenged each other. They motivated each other. And for the first time in years, Simon felt something unfamiliar: excitement. So he did what any man with sense would do. He asked her out, and to his delight, she said yes. Meanwhile, Caroline's world was beginning to crack. While Simon was experiencing something genuine, Caroline was still clinging to illusions. Post-divorce, she convinced herself that she was still the ultimate prize, that she could have any man she desired, that one lucky encounter would validate her worth. So she went searching, in all the wrong places with all the wrong people. First, there was Aaron. Charismatic, smooth-talking, always ready with an excuse. The problem? Aaron was married. And not in the "we're separating" kind of way. No, he was deeply embedded in family life. Happy wife, 2 kids, the full package. By the time Caroline uncovered the truth, she was furious. But beneath that anger festered a harsher reality. She hadn't even checked. She had assumed that any man who pursued her had to be sincere. She was mistaken. Then came Elijah. Elijah seemed different at first. He had that effortless charm, the kind that makes a woman feel like she's the only one in the room. He whispered exactly what she wanted to hear. "You're incredible. I see a future with you. You deserve everything." Caroline was captivated, until the warning signs surfaced, the vague financial troubles, the half-truths, the constant big deal that was always just around the corner. And then, the request. It started small. "Hey, could you spot me a couple hundred, just until next week?" It began with small requests. Then it escalated. "If you could just spare $5, I'd finally be able to close this deal. It's a sure thing, babe." And in that instant, Caroline saw the truth. He wasn't with her for love. He was with her for money. Elijah had never been interested in a real relationship. He had been after a source of cash. And for the first time in ages, Caroline made the right choice. She walked away. But as she left, the realization sank deep. Every man who had ever pursued her, all the attention she had once craved, None of it had been genuine. It had all been an illusion, a false sense of security she had built to avoid confronting reality. She wasn't irreplaceable, not because she lacked charm or beauty, but because she had spent years seeking approval rather than cultivating true, meaningful relationships. Suddenly, all the sweet talk, the playful smirks, the drinks that strangers had eagerly bought her over the years, they all seemed hollow. Because real value, the kind that lasts, isn't determined by how many people desire you. It's defined by who truly respects and cherishes you. And for the first time, Caroline had to confront an uncomfortable question. Had she ever actually experienced that? When she was married to Simon, she had been given love, care, and devotion, but she had failed to appreciate it. And now, Simon had moved on. He and Melissa had gone on several dates, and something about it felt different. There were no mind games, no battles to see who could appear more indifferent, no quiet struggles over pride. Just two people who simply enjoyed being around each other. Melissa had something rare. She had her own dreams, her own ambitions, her own life. She wasn't looking for someone to complete her. She was already whole. For Simon, it was a revelation. They shared laughter. They pushed each other to grow. They were building something real. And little by little, Simon began to experience something he never had with Caroline. A genuine partnership. Not a performance, not a contest, but a bond founded on admiration, respect, and sincerity. As he sat across from Melissa, watching the excitement in her eyes as she spoke about her latest business endeavor, a realization struck him. He wasn't just dating again. He was falling for someone who truly deserved him. This story has come to an end. This story is a harsh but necessary reminder. You are not truly valued until you're gone, but your worth should never depend on someone else's recognition. If someone sees you as replaceable, let them try to find someone better. Respect can't be bought with gifts. Love doesn't survive on patience alone, and sacrificing your boundaries for someone else's comfort only leads to pain. Real strength isn't in trying to hold on to someone who doesn't want to stay. It's in letting go and choosing yourself. Because the best revenge? Thriving without those who never valued you. What's your opinion? Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from, and I'll say goodbye to you until the next video. Goodbye.